Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Snam's 2019 interim results presentation. Looking first at the scenario, the outlook for gas infrastructure continues to improve. Gas prices are down in the last 12 months, touching a low of 10.5 euros per megawatt hour in June, which is 50% down year on year. This was also driven by the oversupply in European LNG markets. This decline, together with a quick increase of CO2 costs of also about 50% in the first half, has made coal to gas switching increasingly convenient in many European countries. Lower gas prices heading into the summer season have also opened summer-winter spreads, increasing the use of storage throughout Europe. Taking a closer look at Italy, gas for power in the first half was up 17%, driven by lower power import from France, lower hydro availability in Italy, and a decline in the use of coal. Looking more specifically at June, when Italy and Europe were going through a heat wave, gas demand for power rose as much as 24% compared to the previous June. As electricity demand rose for cooling, hydro production was lower because this heat wave was also dry, and coal decline continued with consumption down 34%. This volatility in gas demand for power generation, which was up 24% in the context of a 2.8% rise in power demand, highlights the value of the gas system's flexibility in dealing with intense weather conditions that are becoming more common, both in the winter as well as in the summer. In this context, our business plan is progressing well. We now have visibility up to 2023 on the key pillars of our regulatory system. The final document on the fifth regulatory period confirmed the existing framework, as does the more recent consultation document for storage. We're continuing our constructive dialogue with the regulator, both on output-based incentives and asset health. Our CapEx plan is in line with our full-year budget, and we're improving our capacity to deliver new regulated services to the Italian market. We have earned 9 million euros compared to the same period in 2018. Meanwhile, we're continuing to cut costs by another 5 million euros in the first half of the year. We're continuing to strengthen our exposure to the energy transition. Overall, we've completed over 100 new interconnections to our grid from biomethane plants and natural gas service stations. Snam for Mobility has now contractualized 73 new CNG or LCNG stations and recently signed an agreement for a further 26. TAP is progressing well and is now 88% complete. DESFA's regulatory review in Greece is positive, and the steep decline in Greek spreads has improved the risk-adjusted outlook for this asset. We continue to create value through the optimization of the financial structure of Snam and treasury management, also leveraging on our ESG approach to access new sources of funding. We recently secured a loan from EIB to fund our sustainable mobility business, and we've issued the first European climate action bond. This progress translates into solid first half results. Regulated revenues were up 3.3%, driven by the growth in the asset base, the increase in the WACC, and the increase in the output-based incentives. EBITDA was up 4.4% as a result of higher revenues and of the additional efficiency achieved in the first half. Income from associates was up 39% due to the DESFA acquisition that was completed at the end of last year, and the higher result of Teréga, also due to a one-off effect from the release of a tax provision in the first quarter. Net income was up 11%, also benefiting from lower financial charges due to the bond rollover and further efforts on treasury management, leveraging on favorable market conditions. We don't expect all of the positive effects in the first half of the year to continue for the second half. The strong results so far allows us to revise our guidance upwards from a growth in net income of 5% year on year to a growth of between 6 and 7 on a full year basis. I would also like to take this opportunity to highlight the progress we're making on ESG. ESG has been further incorporated into our governance, and we've appointed a dedicated specific new ESG board committee, which has oversight on all our environmental, social, and governance themes. Starting with sustainability of our operations, we're continuing to reduce methane emissions and are well on track to reaching our long-term objectives. Meanwhile, we're continuing to study the full potential of green and low-carbon gas in Italy, working together with the regulator on the long-term scenarios. Deeper and faster decarbonization targets, which are currently being discussed across Europe, imply significant potential volumes of hydrogen, which is quickly emerging as a solution for the hard-to-abate sectors. Hydrogen benefits from falling costs of renewable generation and the much lower cost of transport and storage compared to other renewable alternatives. And of course, hydrogen also benefits from the possibility of leveraging existing gas infrastructure. Earlier this year, we ran a pilot project to supply a blend of hydrogen and natural gas into the transmission network, and we went all the way to end industrial users. This was a first in Europe, and it's a first step to ensure the readiness of our asset base for this new clean gas. Realizing the potential of green gas will require significant investments in terms of energy infrastructure. In order to contribute to this very important debate, we will be holding a global hydrogen ESG conference together with the IEA, IRENA, and the Italian government in Rome on October 10, to which you are all invited. Thank you for your attention. I will now hand over to Alessandra for a closer look at results.
Thank you, Marco. EBITDA in the first half was 1,111 million euro, at 47 million over the same period of prior year. This number reflects the increase in regulated revenues of 40 million, mainly due to the increase in allowed remuneration, tariff RAB increase, and a gradual ramp-up in regulated services for 3 million, 2 million in the balancing activities, which we already had last year, and 1 million in storage services, which is a new service launched this year. This is the effect on the cost-cutting plan that delivered further 5 million euro in the first half of this year, and is expected to generate more than 45 million euro savings by year-end since the beginning of the plan, which, as we recall, started on the base of 2016. Other components largely offset each other. They include negatives such as higher costs for new initiatives and their integration, higher provisions, and positives such as higher sales of materials and lower energy costs, mainly reflecting the recovery of cost sustained in 2019. Looking at our associates in more detail, the increase in net income contribution was driven by Teréga for 14 million euros, thanks to the increase in the asset base and lower depreciation related to the acquisition premium, but also to a one-off effect connected to the release of a tax provision accrued in 2017. Positive options on 2019 capacity in interconnectors and the entry of DESFA in the perimeter. Its performance is linked to volumes and is therefore seasonal, with the third quarter expected to be the lowest in the year. You may have seen the positive update on grid regulation, which is RAB-based, thus supporting development investments, and revised remuneration, which partially incorporates the significant improvement in Greek macro environment. Greek spreads at the beginning of the prior regulatory period were 700 basis points and are now 250 basis points, while the new allowed remuneration has moved for 2019 from 9.22% to 8.23%. These companies, which we account for using the equity method, provided 95 million euro of net income contribution in the first half. For the full year, we are not expecting this number to double, as the positive Teréga and DESFA effect will not apply consistently looking forward. The consultation is ongoing in France on the next regulatory period for transport and storage. The proposed WACC is lower than the current one, also because of discounting and the reduction in the total tax rate. Overall, the impact on our social portfolio will be limited. As a reference, our pro quota share of international social EBITDA would have been 207 million in the first half of the year. Moving to the net profit for the first half, it was up 58 million compared to last year. This was driven by the positive performance of our operations, net of 20 million of higher D&A, lower net interest expenses of 13 million euros, thanks to last year liability management, bond rollover, and treasury optimization carried out in the first half, and higher taxes due to an higher earnings before tax. The tax rate for the period was around 26.3% on EBT, including associates, versus 27% last year. Cash from operation benefited from positive working capital of 341 million euros. That includes 310 million of tariff-related items, of which 295 of additional tariff components and 16 million due to overcharging, both to be mainly reabsorbed during the year. We've also considered that about 180 million related to overcharges and penalties cashed in the last year have just been repaid in July. The operating cash flow covered net investments and equity cash flow, mainly including the payment of the interim and final dividends of 746 million euros, leading to a net debt in the first half of 11.5 billion. We confirm our year-end net debt guidance of 11.7 billion, that includes a negative working capital of circa 100 million euros. But now give you an update on our debt structure. In the first half, we issued 750 million with an average cost of 1.5% and a tenure of circa 8 years. 500 million were climate action bonds and 250 million were private placements. This replaced circa 770 million euro bonds at an average cost of circa 3.8% expired in the first half. Furthermore, 3 new EIB loans have been signed in the first part of the year for a total amount of 370 million euro, of which one has been signed yesterday for an amount of 105 million, with an average maturity of almost 20 years and an average cost of circa 1% at fixed rate. On the banking side, we realize that we have achieved the target envisaged in our 3.2 billion sustainable loan, thus getting a discount of 2.5 basis points on the facility margin starting from April 2019. And we are extending the 3.2 billion euro syndicated loan by 1 extra year. In the second part of the year, we will be focused on the following actions: potential opportunistic for funding, continued focus on treasury management optimization, and optimization of our financial structure, including our resources. Thank you for your attention. I will now be pleased to answer your questions.
Yes, we're happy for Q&A now.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, if you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad and wait for your name to be announced. If you wish to cancel your request, please press the hash key. Once again, it's star 1 to ask a question. Our first question comes from the line of Harry Wyburd from Bank of America. Please ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking my questions. I've got 3. So firstly, just on the new updated guidance. So you've increased your net profit growth guidance to 6 to 7% this year. I presume with the buyback, the EPS growth will be slightly higher than that. And then looking forward to next year, should we just apply the 5% EPS growth guidance on the new 2019 base, or is there a one-off element to what's going on this year, which means the 2020 growth could be slightly lower? Then the second question is on DESFA. That seems to be going very well. Could you just remind us how much of this improvement is structural? If you could remind us what volume gearing sits in that business and how we should think about volumes, and then just update us, you touched on it earlier, but update us a bit more on the regulatory outlook there. And then finally, just a clarification on slide 8 with Teréga. You mentioned lower residual depreciation of the acquisition price premium. Could you just explain what that is? Is that just a lower PPA amortization of purchase price allocation amortization. If you could just explain what that is and whether it's recurring. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Harry. On guidance, we do not assume nor give any buyback guidance year on year. And I would say that for next year, we will talk about that in the context of the presentation that we will do for the new plan. On DESFA and Teréga, I would hand over to Alessandra.
On Teréga, it's approximately 7 million lower PPA. That's the effect that I was referring to. On DESFA, the new regulation, as I said, is positive. First, there is an element of better than expected, given what we said 1 year ago in terms of the evolution of the remuneration vis-à-vis market environment, which will improve much more than what is effective included in the WACC. On the volumes, it's not a volume-exposed regulation. I just want to be clear. But whilst in our case, the volume adjusts during the year, effectively, in the case of DESFA, this is a across-year phenomenon that gets reabsorbed. This gives a little bit of volatility. At the same time, so it's a RAB-based regulation where volumes are potentially temporary upside rather than a structural upside. In addition, with the market performing very well in terms of volumes, we are accelerating the recovery of some old tariff-related items. The sum of these elements is what is giving the performance of DESFA for the first part of this year a particularly strong contribution.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from the line of Javier Suarez. Please ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for taking my questions as well. Three on my side. The first one is coming back to the increase in the guidance for 2019. I just wanted to be sure of the reasons behind this increase in the upgrade for the net income guidance. Is that mainly related to the better performance on the equity consolidated lines? And if so, is that something structural or is something related to some one-off? I'm just the thing that I'm trying to understand if the increase in the guidance is related to this release in the tax provision and lower residual depreciation that you are mentioning in slide number 8, or there is something structural there that is making your performance in, I guess, DESFA and Teréga better than expected. Some clarification there will be helpful. Then on the cost cutting in slide number 7, you are mentioning 5 million euros of positive contribution from the ongoing efficiency program. I just wanted to have your latest view on where this number should be by the year end, i.e., which should be the contribution of the cost cutting effort to the EBITDA by the year end. The latest thing is on there has been a regulatory paper issued by the French authority on the gas transmission and storage business affecting Teréga. Any comment on that regulatory document, on how do you believe that the document could be improved, or and that could be helpful as well? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Javier. So on the guidance, moving from 5 to a range of 6 to 7 is about 20 million. And I would say that's almost evenly split between the lower financial charges that Alessandra talked about in detail related to treasury management and to generally better than expected cost of funding. And the other half is related to the income from associates, about evenly split between Teréga and DESFA. And as we said, some of these do have an element that's non-recurring. Regarding the cost cutting, the full year would benefit from around this 5 extra million, so we're now targeting around or greater than 45 million overall. For Teréga, you want to take this, Ale?
Yeah, clearly we are supporting Teréga in its effort on the consultation with the French regulator authorities. It is effectively factoring a different tax environment. Overall, we are very pleased with our portfolio, and even in the more conservative scenario, it would have a very marginal effect. But as you know, when you go through consultation, there is work that needs to be done. The dialogue has historically been very constructive with the regulator, and we will just be working together with Terga on this. I think the overall message, we like very much our portfolio, and this will not have a significant effect in any shape or form.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from the line of Enrico Bartoli. Please ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon, and thanks for taking my question. The first one is regarding your cost of debt. You highlighted some measures that you took in the first half in order to optimize the cost of debt. If you can spend some words regarding the further potential that you have considering the current interest rate environment. In particular, I was wondering, during the presentation of business plan, you had an indication of an average 1.8% cost of debt over the plan period, considering the forward curve at that time. If it's possible to have some sensitivity considering of this number, considering the current interest rate environment. Second question is regarding DESFA. Now that actually the new return has been set, we have more visibility on the regulation. I was wondering if you have updated or can give us some more visibility on the capex plan of the company and on the possible RAB evolution over the next years. And the last one is regarding the evolution of the other businesses, those related to energy efficiency and energy transition. If you can elaborate a bit on the evolution in the first half, I guess that probably EBITDA would be still negative due to startup. If you can share us how you see the evolution of their contribution and where we can see those that contribution at the break even. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Enrico. I will start with the last two, and then Ali, you can talk about the forward curve and the cost of debt. So on DESFA, we will talk. We are in the process of working on its first business plan post-acquisition and on the 10-year plan as well. There's a new government in place, and we will provide a full update on that in the context of our new plan. I would say that will also be the time when we will give more visibility on the progress on the new businesses. You're right in indicating that the contribution of EBITDA is marginal on some businesses and negative on one of the businesses, which is fully in line with our plan. We're satisfied with the trend and the growth that we're seeing in these businesses, and we are seeing a lot of traction on the energy efficiency side, where the pipeline that we have built is much greater than what we had expected. But again, we will give you a full update when we talk about these businesses in the context of the new plan. Ali, do you want to talk about cost of debt?
On cost of debt, I think overall the interest charges were 85 million for the first half. We think that given the current market environment, that's a good number for the full year. But we will continue to optimize and from a treasury management as long as the market remains in this shape, particularly when it comes to our short-term funding needs. And we will be opportunistic vis-a-vis additional funding, effectively pre-funding for 2020, which may have a marginal negative effect in terms of cost of carry on what we have seen for the first half, where we had bond rollover. And we will continue to be very vigilant on possible optimization of our debt structure, as we've done towards the end of last year. I think that vis-a-vis the plan, we don't want to get into long-term guidance, as Marco said, but if we take the forward curve today versus what we had in November, it has gone down, let's say, around 100 basis points, and credit spread has shrank by around, call it, 50 basis points. So you can assume that our 1.8, which was factoring significantly different market conditions, today would be a lower number. But again, we're not getting into long-term target guidance.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our next question comes from the line of Anna Maria Scigalia. Please ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon. It's Anna Maria from Morgan Stanley. Just a very quick one on my side. If I put together the comments that were made on the guidance and the 20 million and the one-off, this seems to imply that there is a 50 million overall increase in the guidance also for future years. Even that I would assume that the benefit of the lower cost of debt is going to stay, and there is some improvement in France that is going to stay unless the regulation is materially worse. Is that correct?
Anna Maria, just to be, I think just for simplicity, you should consider structural the financing related, the cost of debt related parts. As we look at the associates, with the exception of some of the DESFA positives, which, by the way, have more to do with the improved outlook as we look at the value of this acquisition we've made. With the improvement in the Greek macroeconomic outlook, the risk-adjusted returns on this that you don't see here is much improved. And there is some improvement also on the recurring contribution from that business. But for your purposes, I would look at the reduced cost of debt as where you can stretch out into the future.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from the line of Stefano Gamberini. Please ask your question.
Good afternoon, everybody. A few questions, if I may. First of all, regarding the M&A, could you update us what is the situation regarding new acquisition in biomethane and other activities that could we expect in the forthcoming years, and if you are also scouting some new initiatives on that side? This is my question.
Okay, on biomethane, I don't know if you can call it M&A. These are very small projects. As you know, we've acquired a small company in Pordenone that builds the biomethane plants. This, we think, has helped accelerate the market. As I mentioned earlier, we've had a number of connections already to our plants, and we are evaluating the acquisition of specific plants in partnership with local either agriculture producers or waste management producers. So this is a business that it's more about organic growth and maybe bolt-on, but these are very small investments that have an interesting return, have a regulated type incentive. And as we said previously, if we're involved in the whole value chain, including CNG, we see the opportunity of bringing 100% renewable gas into vehicles and into trucks, not only as the way to maximize the incentive, but also the way to begin promoting our own network that's becoming greener.
And if I can just add another one regarding the regulation, when we can expect some update regarding the out-of-base incentives that should arrive for gas transport, if you have some talk with the regulator.
We have ongoing discussions. As you have seen in the results, there's already quite significant growth in the output-based incentive on the balancing. We expect throughout the fifth regulatory period, we will have gradual and increasing profits deriving from this activity, really around the four issues that we discussed previously, around safety, around the markets and how to facilitate market interconnections and development of new markets, and third, around the environment and how we can be incentivized to favor decarbonization, and then around service quality. So they will be introduced gradually throughout this regulatory period.
Okay, many thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our next question comes from the line of Emanuele Oggioni. Please ask your question.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for taking my question as well. I ask you an update, if you could provide us an update on the ongoing discussion about the coal phase out in Italy by 2025. Also related as regards this matter, the Sardinia methanization. Could you provide us an update and eventually a delay how could impact on your business plan? Thank you.
Emanuele, did you ask about Sardinia?
Yeah, the coal phase out in Italy by 2025, as the ongoing discussion are point for a delay, actually. And then also related to this, the Sardinia methanization.
Okay, I got it right. So on the first point, and the phase out, we understand is going ahead. We have been asked by current coal producers to study the interconnection to our grid of these plants. The timing is tight, the commitment is there, and from what we see and read in discussions we're having, it's going to happen. So that will have a positive impact on gas demand and network build-outs. Coming to Sardinia, I recently met with the governor there, and we both agreed to press ahead quickly. They have a sense of urgency to achieve methanization because of not only the environmental benefits of gas over GPL, but there's very significant cost advantages. Today, on a wholesale level, GPL can cost 3 times more than methane. So the cost-benefit analysis for the methanization of Sardinia is very robust because for the heating and for the residential, as well as those industries that use GPL for heating and hotels, the cost advantage is very significant, as well as the environmental advantage. So this is already included in our plan. We have a joint venture with Società Gas d'Italia, with SGE, and we're working on the permitting for this, and it's progressing, I'd say.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. There are no further questions at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much.